Bang.
There she goes.
143 in the books, Pete.
143, Jared. Can you imagine that? Could you have pictured that originally? I don't know what the hell that was.
I think that's Jared saying he likes it.
He likes it.
He likes it. Hey,
I
folks,
was
welcome.
sure I'd be fired by now.
The thought has crossed Pete's mind many times.
At least once. At least once.
Welcome to the Rebel's Edge, folks. This is brought to you by Market Rebellion, of course. Jared is indeed handling the sound and the visuals that you'll be seeing throughout the program, as well as running the clock. Gwang, 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 gwang. Pete is, of course, co-founder of Market Rebellion. And we always started off with the macro minute, Pete. So let's take a look at the markets and say, well, macro today is that the NASDAQ pretty well, and mainly because of Microsoft, which we will, of course, get to. But the rest of the market kind of soft. The Dow 30's down 22 points. That's a nothing burger. The S&P 500 moving to the upside by 7 points. That's pretty much a nothing burger too. So people are following what Microsoft does, Pete.
No doubt, earnings season, we're finally getting some reactions in earnings season. John, my macro minute would be crypto and the crypto climb. Because take a look at what's going on right now with Bitcoin. It's actually up about 9% today, a big bounce to the upside. I think that's got some influence. People are always looking for alternatives, right? It used to always be gold or silver or something in the metals. And now all of a sudden, crypto seems to be one of those where the folks that want a little bit of risk, well, they seem to like crypto still, and Bitcoin is one of them. A really nice ramp to the upside. And those beta names are ripping today, John, having another back-to-back good day with Marathon and Riot and some of those names that are in the mining community.
Yeah, and in fact, Pete, down here at the conference I'm at, which is the Squire Conference down here in Puerto Rico, there's a fair amount of crypto firms down here. Riot is one of them. Hut 8 is another. There are several crypto firms down here, so Pete's exactly right. I'm going to say, Pete, on the fantastic futures side of things.
Fantastic futures.
We've got coffee moving up again. Now, today was a pretty big move. It's, 3% today. But look at that recent high on the chart Jared just put up there. Thank you, Jared. That chart shows you that we topped out at 200 this year. Look at that run to 200, by the way, Pete. Sold off a little bit, and now we're making another run. Maybe that's what this one says. If you're somebody like me or like Pete that loves coffee, you're probably not all that thrilled by coffee prices going up, up, up. But it's yet another thing that's up double digits year over year, and 16% so far this year with, I'd say, Pete, at least another 10 or 11% in front of it right now.
You know what no one ever pays attention to, John? The price of coffee going up, but then it also goes back down oftentimes, right? And it seems like Starbucks and all the rest of these coffee guys seem to raise their prices with that rise in coffee. They never lower them again. Just keep an eye on that. I'm going to give you, for my fantastic futures, I'm going to give you the two-year treasury, John. Here's what I'm going to show you. On the 11th, it was 396. On the 18th, it was 428. Now we're right back again. We're at 396. So that movement, that flow has been pretty extreme. Doesn't maybe sound like it, but for what it is, that is pretty extreme in a 2-week channel to see that make that kind of a move to the upside and the fall back. It's fallen back because people are willing to take some risk out there, and they're taking it, whether it's in the NASDAQ or crypto right now. But you want liquidity? Go to the CME, Terry, right?
For the fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Well, I'll tell you what else is fantastic, Pete. The Microsoft earnings, because Microsoft rallied big. It was earnings driven by a really bullish sentiment on their AI platform. Sure, they did great numbers. I mean, I think it was, Pete, 300 million monthly active users of their teams, what Microsoft calls their teams, and Bing making a pretty good run at Google. And I think a lot of that, Pete, is because Bing has taken that Chat GPT and really enhanced what Bing does because of it. And for that reason, Microsoft's seeing a lot of love today.
Well, on top of everything, John, when the numbers are in front of us, and they are, we actually look at it and go, well, they did pretty daggone well, right? They beat on earnings, they beat on revenue. Their margins actually raised up from 41% to 42%. Across the board, they did everything that they needed to do. AI, yes, absolutely. That is something that they are focused on. They understand how big that industry is and the growth that they see there. So I think Satya Nadella is doing an absolutely phenomenal job. I think he has navigated some difficult times and done a really great job as well. And like everybody else in the tech space, they are getting people layoffs here and there. And we're seeing that across many of the names, Meta being one of the leaders for sure there, John. But I'd also say from a CapEx perspective, John, they are spending, and they are spending it primarily, I think, on AI. And that's why that number went up pretty big as well. So across the board, nothing but good things to say about Microsoft today and what they're doing. That doesn't mean they can't pull back again, but they certainly are in all the right spaces right now, John, as a company. I mean, they are just absolutely clicking perfectly along. And I love what we're seeing right now at a Microsoft. One of my longest holds that I've got.
Well, and Pete, operating margin over 43%. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, folks. That is why tech stocks do as well as they do. I mean, that kind of operating margin prior to tech's explosion was just unheard of. All right. What about Fisker, Pete? FSR, Fisker, double-digit rally. A couple days earlier, they said that European customers would start getting deliveries of these Ocean Extreme SUVs. That's what Fisker calls their SUV. And that it gets about 440 miles per charge, a full charge, that is, of course. And today, the European regulators approved them. So, man, if you're somebody who's believed in Fisker, it's no longer just that car. Now it's this SUV, the Ocean.
The only problem I've got with these guys, John, I'll start right there with the Ocean, as you're just talking about. They've got three separate models, $38,000 all the way up to $68,000. Now, they're pretty thrilled about things. They're going to produce 5,000 of these things. I mean, let's sort of step back and just give Elon another little bit of an applause. When he delivers in size, right? We talk about GM, we talk about Ford. Everybody's going into the EV world. Porsche, everybody else is following along. Fisker, they want to go along, and that's who they are. But how many are they producing? There's a reason why this stock's up 19%, John, because those percentages seem to come a little bit easier when you're on your all-time, or at least your 52-week lows. This is a stock that is burning cash. They've got an incredible amount of short interest. If they can't execute at a better way, John, I don't know how much longer they're around. Because when you look at the cash burn, you look at the balance sheet, and then you just see how many they're going to produce, that doesn't seem like that adds up to something very big right now to me. Now, this news today sounds great. You know, in theory, everybody's listening and they're saying, hey, that's fantastic. Look at this big rise. Well, maybe part of that is also a short squeeze. So I am not buying into this one, John.
Fisker was $4.90 last night, folks. It's over $5 now. It's $5.90, 20% rally today. But to Pete's point, do we just break $5 and now firms can buy it that have a mandate that they can't buy shares under $5? But is it sustainable? And he just laid out the case why it needs to be sustainable, or this thing is going to go bye-bye. All right, let's talk, Pete, about the next one, Pac West. So as painful as it was, I finally bit the bullet and closed out the remainder of my, what was it, Pete? FRC. I can't even say the name anymore.
First Republic.
I hate the stock so much.
Yeah.
But it's not the stock, it's me. It's the fact that, you need to take off the blinders and just say, well, this one didn't work. I'm not going to turn a finger painting into a Rembrandt. I'm just going to walk away. So finally I had to. But Pac West is a big winner, double-digit rally today. They said deposits rose, which, of course, I wish they would have had news like that over at FRC. Again, I can't say the name. It's like Voldemort, Pete. But they didn't have an increase in deposits over at FRC, but Pac West did, but Western Alliance Bancorp did. Those are my two big winners in the space. But I always remember the pain of the loser, Pete.
That's the sign of a good trader, John, because you know what? You don't want to sit there laughing it up and resting on your laurels. And then you've got some of these other ones. Those are the ones you learn from and you get out quick. And you talked about that yesterday. Pac West, yes, they did add deposits, 1.1 billion, as a matter of fact, to get themselves up above 28 billion in deposits. But John, there are some buts in this whole thing as well. I will say this though. I do like the fact that the secured deposits that are sitting there, that's moved up from 48% to 73%. So that's something that I think is a definite positive as well. Were they in as big a trouble? Probably not. Did they have a lot of trouble? I'd say they absolutely did. But they are coming out of this one a little bit better, a little bit faster, and those deposits didn't quite leave the same way that they were leaving from some of the others that really, unfortunately, are no longer with us. And I don't know how much longer First Republic's going to be. But all that being said, John, interesting. It'll be really interesting to see, can this actually continue, or is this a once kind of a story of this particular earnings and some of the numbers that are going up there? I actually think they can sustain it, but I think the proof is going to have to come out over the next couple of weeks.
This was a $34 stock, folks, prior to the banking crisis, traded all the way down to $5. Pac West did. Not nearly as big a drop as a couple of the others saw, even though that's an ugly drop. Yeah. But now it's back to almost $12 a share. So congratulations, Pac West. Your leadership team did, I think, yeoman's work to get this thing back on track. And unfortunately, Pete, a lot of these banking stocks, regional banks, got tarred with that same brush. So some of them deserved it and some of them didn't. Let's talk about Chipotle, Pete, because they reported $10.50. That was their earnings per share, EPS, $10.50. Revenue, $2.4 billion. Both of those well ahead of street expectations. And I think, Pete, that we both know why. I suspect it is not only do they have a great product, but they're a trade down. If you can't afford to go out to a fast casual like a Chili's or something like that, instead you're going by and you're picking up a burrito for $9.50 or $11 or whatever it might be, or a salad, whatever, at Chipotle. That's a trade down to me, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely it is, John. And I think that's something that everybody really should step back and say, wait a minute, McDonald's, pretty damn good. We're looking over at Chipotle, pretty damn good. We've looked at Walmart, pretty damn good. Well, all of those are trade downs. So when you're talking about the economy, when you talk about recession in the more macro world, this is a little bit of a read-through, right? And you look at the free cash flow, absolutely phenomenal. These guys' free cash flow, John, somewhere close to $750 million. That's not so bad. As a matter of fact, their margins are very, very good as well. They're actually pushing out there that they have fresher quality than they once did. Brian Niccol has done an absolutely unbelievable job with execution, coming from Taco Bell, taking over at Chipotle, a company that was literally going like this, John, down to the toilet, and he has raised them back up once again. It's been a pretty miraculous thing. You talked about some of those numbers. That earnings number specifically, I mean, they absolutely did crush it. And they are opening more stores, and their same store sales are strong. So across the board, there is nothing that looks like a negative at all in this earnings, except for the fact that those earnings are so good. That is telling us something, I think, about the economy.
Truly. And again, Pete, we've been mentioning to many folks down here at this Sequire conference in Puerto Rico that Disney doesn't cut 7,000 people because the economy's booming. Costco doesn't do what they've done and talk about what the consumer, which is a generally a more well-heeled consumer at their stores, what they're cutting back on if the economy's booming. So I'm not saying we're going into a deep recession, but we are starting to feel that things aren't as good as the some news reports would have it, Pete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. We're going to jump to some of the NBA stuff now, John.
Let's do a little NBA, starting with your favorite player, KD.
Well, I thought it would be interesting just to hit on this one, John, because as we get into the playoffs, and the playoffs in some cases are now done, and it is now, as a matter of fact, the Suns just took them out. So when you look at what's going on, we talked about this when it happened, John, the trade deadline and all the big trades that were going on. This one was the one, right? I mean, KD leaving Brooklyn, coming to Phoenix, and he becomes a Sun. All he's done since he's gotten there, John, they went undefeated with him starting in the lineup. I mean, 8-0, that's not so bad. His regular season, he's averaging 26 points a game for the Suns. In the postseason, he's averaging 28 points per game. They lost game one against the Clippers and then swept them. They went to the next four. Bang, 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 bang. This series is done. What an amazing thing they did, John, to create something. They were a really good team already, but they needed something. They needed one more piece. It looks like they got that piece. And when you look around and you see what the Lakers have done, the Lakers actually did something pretty good as well. They grabbed some players. Now, they didn't grab superstars, but they did grab 2 or 3 players, some of them coming from the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they're doing a really great job in terms of being able to be in the rotation, part of the Lakers. And I think that's actually helping the Lakers in this series as well. So I just look at this as the trade deadline trades, John, and what really happened. It looks like, other than Kyrie and the debacle that happened in Dallas, it seems like some of the better trades happened on this trade deadline this year for the NBA, and it makes a lot of sense. By the way, KD, that guy's game minutes, John, he's playing almost every minute of the game. You got to respect that. He's no longer young. He's already been there. He's got a championship with Golden State. The guy's done an amazing job. And I think he stands out above everybody else in terms of some of the trades that led into what we're seeing right now in the NBA playoffs. Do you like that best, or is there something else that you saw?
No, I'll just say his teammate, Pete, Devin Booker. Look at these numbers, folks. Booker, 47 points. KD, 31. The fact that those two have contributed so big to, the game 5 that Pete just described is amazing. Booker had 8 rebounds. KD, Pete, had 6. 10 assists for Booker, 4 for KD, because, he's kind of allergic to leather, as they say, Pete. He likes to shoot it. He doesn't like to pass it. Steals, Booker had 2, KD had 1. Field goals, 19 of 27 for Booker, 10 of 19 for Durant. So you put those two guys out on the court, if they play like that, Pete, they can beat anybody.
Yep, they're a fun team to watch. I'll tell you what's surprising me right now in the NBA. Celtics having a little bit of a struggle. There's a couple others out there. We talked about the Heat yesterday and how good they look, actually. And so Milwaukee's got some trouble. Boston's got a little bit of trouble. So there could be a lot of things going on that changes over the next week or so. We'll find out. It should be a lot of fun. And we're just in the first round. So that they do have ratings that are pretty good right now, by the way. For all those haters out there, these bozos who didn't understand what you and I were talking about, John, ratings were terrible during the regular season. Playoffs, they're doing pretty daggone well. And we didn't talk about seats in the stadiums. We talked about TV ratings, which is where the money is. Let's be honest. All right, next, we're going to go to football, John. We're one day away. We've been talking about this draft for a long time. We got our own stock draft at Market Rebellion tomorrow, right at the close. That's going to be kind of fun. We're going to be drafting different stocks and this, that, and the other. But I'm looking at this draft in the NFL, John. I'll be at the cigar bar tomorrow night with all the boys, a bunch of the Vikings. Should be a lot of fun. It's going to be killer. But I will tell you, Houston, I have made this decision. I think these guys, John, could really make an unbelievable draft for themselves by not taking a quarterback at number 2. So I'm backing off of my CJ Stroud, either number one or number two, and obviously Bryce Young in the one of those two spots as well. But what I really like, John, is Houston sitting there at number two. Well, you know what they could take? They could take our man Anderson, the linebacker defensive end from Alabama, who is the number one rated player in the entire draft. So they can get him at number two. They got another pick at 12. They need a quarterback. So I'm going to give you two because I think I know for sure Hendon Hooker will be there. He still will be there. He shouldn't be there. He ought to be higher, but he's not because of his injury to his leg and some of the concerns that people have. I don't believe any of those concerns. I think this guy's completely fine, and I've seen a lot of video. He seems to be doing pretty good. But, Will Levis, John, big, strong. He's been raising up. There's people out there who are speculating that the guy could potentially be one of those first couple picks as well. If he's not, he will slide down. So I think if Will Levis is there, you take him. If Hendon Hooker is there and Will is not, you take Hooker. You get Hooker, you get Anderson. Houston suddenly becomes a very, very interesting team in a really weak conference very rapidly. And I think that could make it a lot of fun. That could be a major move in the draft if they do that and they're patient to wait for the quarterbacks.
And I think they could be, Pete, could be patient, I mean, because like you said, that Will Levis is a beast. Yeah. And he just needs more coaching and, a couple years of maturity. He's not one of these 24, 25-year-old guys. So, yeah, I think that kid could be a great pickup. And you mentioned Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. As long as that kid can move, as long as he's got his leg back, Pete, then, yeah, that kid should be in those top two or three quarterbacks taken. And I don't know, who's worked him out and how that's done. But I got to believe that given how fast kids recover these days from even traumatic injuries, he could be one of those exceptional players. I'll throw a name out there to you, Pete, the UCLA quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I love that he's got two last names, Pete. Thompson-Robinson. But that kid is after the combines and some of his workouts, a lot of people were sort of, quietly going, let me see here. And those are the guys you want to watch because, there are people who should be number one and number two, Stroud and Bryce, but there are others that sort of surprise into that mix. And this could be one.
Yeah, and people are also fascinated ever since the combine on Richardson, John. No one talked about the kid at all until the combine. And then suddenly he's a much better quarterback who's much more efficient, he's not throwing all the interceptions. Actually, the reality is he's not efficient at all. He does throw interceptions, and he's got a talent. There's no doubt he's athletic as hell, but that doesn't mean he should have gone up the way he has. So that'll be interesting too. And I'll be very interested in watching who takes him and what GM is going to get fired next year. Anyway, interesting stuff, and it's always fun, and we got the draft tomorrow.
Looking forward to it, Pete. So make sure you join us tomorrow, folks, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and at the end of the day, we'll be doing that stock draft. But honestly, this is going to be an interesting day, and we'll already have answers to some of the questions that Pete's posed at this time tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We'll see you then.